Marcus Wellington sat behind his big glass desk on the 42nd floor of the tallest building in Manhattan. Outside his window, the city looked like a toy set. Cars moved like ants far below. People walked on sidewalks that looked like thin lines. Marcus owned this building. He owned many buildings. He had so much money that he could buy almost anything he wanted, but money could not buy what Marcus needed most. His phone buzzed. It was his assistant, Jennifer. "Mr. Wellington, your son has another appointment today at 3 o'clock, she said in her professional voice. Marcus looked at his expensive watch. It was already 2:30. He had been in meetings all day. First, he talked to people in Japan about buying their company. Then he spoke with his lawyers about a new business deal. After that, he signed papers that would make him even richer. Every minute of his day was planned. Every minute was about making more money. "Which appointment is this?" Marcus asked, though he already knew. "The speech therapist," Jennifer replied. "It's David's third appointment this week." David, his 8-year-old son. Marcus felt a familiar pain in his chest when he thought about the boy. David was different from other children. 2 years ago, doctors told Marcus that David had autism. They used big words that Marcus did not fully understand. They said David's brain worked differently. They said he might never talk like other kids. They said he might never look people in the eyes or play with friends. Marcus had hired the best doctors money could buy. He paid for the most expensive treatments. David saw speech therapists, behavior specialists, and child psychologists. Marcus spent thousands of dollars every week trying to help his son, but nothing seemed to work. David still sat alone in corners. He still lined up his toys in perfect rows. He still rocked back and forth when he was upset. The worst part was that Marcus did not know how to talk to his own son. "Should I send the car for David?" Jennifer asked. "Yes," Marcus said. "Tell Robert to pick him up from the center." David spent most of his time at a special child care center in Marcus's building. It was on the 10th floor. The center had the best teachers and the newest toys. It cost more than most people made in a year. Marcus told himself it was the best place for David. The truth was that Marcus did not know what else to do with him. Marcus tried to focus on his work, but his mind kept wandering to David. He remembered when his son was born. David had been a beautiful baby with big brown eyes and soft dark hair. Marcus had held him in the hospital and made promises. He promised to be a good father. He promised to teach David everything he knew about business. He promised they would be close. Those promises felt broken now. Marcus's ex-wife Sarah used to say that he cared more about his companies than his family. She was probably right. When David started showing signs of being different, Marcus threw himself into work even more. He did not know how to handle a child who did not respond to normal parenting. When David was 2, he stopped talking. When he was 3, he stopped looking at people. When he was 4, he would scream if anyone touched him. Sarah tried everything. She read books about autism. She joined support groups for parents. She learned special ways to communicate with David. But Marcus just worked longer hours. He told himself that someone had to pay for all the treatments. Someone had to keep the money coming in. The truth was that Marcus was scared. He was scared of his own son. Last year, Sarah had enough. She moved out and took David with her. They lived in a smaller apartment across town now. Marcus saw David every other weekend and some evenings, but even during those visits, Marcus felt like a stranger in his son's life. At 5 o'clock, Marcus finally left his office. The building was getting quiet. Most of his employees had gone home to their families. Marcus took the elevator down to the 10th floor to pick up David. The child care center was bright and colorful. Toys were scattered on the soft carpet. Pictures that children had drawn covered the walls. But the room felt empty to Marcus. Only David and 2 teachers remained. David sat in the corner with his back to the door. He had spread colored pencils on the floor in front of him. The pencils were arranged by color, red pencils in one row, blue in another, yellow in the next. David was very careful about keeping them straight. If someone moved even one pencil, David would get upset. "How was his day?" Marcus asked Mrs. Peterson, David's favorite teacher. Mrs. Peterson smiled, but Marcus could see the tired look in her eyes. "He had a good morning," she said. "He ate his lunch without any problems, but he got upset during story time." Another child knocked over his blocks. Marcus nodded. David did not like when his things were disturbed. He needed everything to be in the right place. "The speech therapist said he made some progress today," Mrs. Peterson continued. "He pointed to 3 different pictures when asked. That's better than last week." Marcus wanted to feel happy about this news, but 3 pictures in a whole session did not seem like much progress. Other 8-year-old children could talk for hours. They could tell stories and ask questions and make jokes. David could barely point at pictures. "David," Marcus said softly, "it's time to go home." David did not look up. He continued arranging his pencils. Marcus waited. He had learned not to rush his son. After a few minutes, David carefully put each pencil back in its box. He stood up and walked to the door without looking at his father. In the car, David sat in his special seat and stared out the window. He did not talk during the 20-minute drive to his mother's apartment. Marcus tried to think of something to say, but everything felt wrong. He could not ask David about his day because David would not answer. He could not tell David about his own day because an 8-year-old would not understand business meetings. So, they sat in silence. When they reached Sarah's building, Marcus walked David to the door. Sarah was waiting in the lobby. She looked tired too. Being David's mother was a full-time job that never ended. "How was the appointment?" Sarah asked. Mrs. Peterson said he pointed to 3 pictures, Marcus replied. Sarah's face lit up a little. She celebrated the small victories that Marcus struggled to appreciate. "That's wonderful," she said. "David, can you show Daddy what you learned today?" David looked at the floor and rocked slightly from side to side. This was what he did when he felt overwhelmed. "Maybe next time," Sarah said gently. She kissed David's forehead and took his hand. "Say goodbye to Daddy." David did not say goodbye. He never did. He just walked into the building with his mother. Marcus drove back to his penthouse apartment alone. The apartment was huge and expensive. It had floor-to-ceiling windows that showed the entire city. It had marble floors and gold fixtures and paintings that cost more than houses, but it felt empty. Marcus made himself a drink and stood by the window. Far below, he could see people walking home from work. They were probably going home to families who talked to each other. Families who hugged and laughed and shared stories about their days. Marcus had everything money could buy, but he felt like the poorest man in the world. He had a son who lived like a stranger. He had an ex-wife who thought he cared more about money than people. He had a life that looked perfect from the outside but felt broken on the inside. Tomorrow would be another day of meetings and deals and phone calls. Tomorrow would be another day of trying to figure out how to be a father to a child he did not understand. Tomorrow would be another day of feeling like he was failing at the one thing that mattered most. Marcus finished his drink and went to bed early. He had to be at the office by 7 in the morning. There was always more work to do. There was always more money to make. But there never seemed to be more time to learn how to love his son the way David needed to be loved. 3 weeks later, Marcus was working late again. The office building was almost empty. Only the cleaning crew and a few security guards remained. Marcus looked at his watch. It was 9:30 in the evening. Most fathers would be home reading bedtime stories to their children. But Marcus was still at his desk, reading reports about a company he wanted to buy in Germany. His phone rang. It was Sarah. "Marcus, I have to work a double shift tonight," she said. Sarah was a nurse at the city hospital. Sometimes she had to work extra hours when other nurses got sick. "Can David stay at the center until I get off work tomorrow morning?" Marcus felt frustrated. He had planned to work until midnight. "Can't your mother watch him? She's visiting my sister in Boston, remember?" Sarah's voice sounded tired. "David is already at the center. Mrs. Peterson said she can stay late, but someone needs to be there with them. The building policy says a parent has to be present after 9 o'clock. Marcus looked at his computer screen. He had 3 more reports to read and 5 phone calls to make to people in different time zones, but David needed him. "Fine," he said. "I'll go down there now." Marcus saved his work and took the elevator to the 10th floor. The child care center looked different at night. The bright lights were dimmed. Most of the toys were put away. The colorful pictures on the walls seemed darker in the shadows. Mrs. Peterson met him at the door. "Thank you for coming," she said. "David is in the quiet room. He's been very calm tonight." The quiet room was where children went when they needed space. It had soft lighting and comfortable cushions. David often spent time there when he felt overwhelmed. Marcus found David sitting on a large blue cushion. He had a picture book in his lap, but he was not reading it. Instead, he was running his fingers along the smooth edges of the pages. This was something David did when he was thinking or trying to calm himself. "Hi, David," Marcus said softly. David looked up for just a second, then back down at his book. Marcus sat in a chair nearby and opened his laptop. He could work while David played quietly. This was how most of their time together went. In the same room, but not really together. For the next hour, Marcus typed emails and made phone calls. David moved from the cushion to a small table where he arranged wooden blocks by size and color. Sometimes David made soft humming sounds. This was his way of talking to himself. At 10:30, Marcus heard something unexpected. It sounded like laughter. But David rarely laughed, and Mrs. Peterson had gone home an hour ago. Marcus looked around the room, but David was still sitting quietly at his table. The sound came again. It was definitely laughter, and it was coming from somewhere else in the building. Marcus saved his work and walked into the hallway. The sound was coming from the direction of the conference rooms. Marcus followed the noise, his expensive shoes clicking softly on the polished floor. He stopped outside conference room B. The door was slightly open, and warm light spilled into the hallway. Inside, Marcus could hear a man's voice speaking in gentle, encouraging tones. Then he heard it again, the unmistakable sound of a child laughing with pure joy. Marcus pushed the door open wider and looked inside. What he saw made him stop breathing. For a moment, David was sitting at the large conference table. In front of him were papers covered with bright watercolor paints. David held a paintbrush in his small hand, and he was making swirling patterns on the paper. The colors were beautiful, blues and greens that flowed together like ocean waves. Next to David sat a man Marcus had seen before but never really noticed. It was Miguel Santos, one of the night janitors. Miguel was probably in his 50s, with kind eyes and graying hair. His work uniform had paint stains on it, and his hands were also stained with various colors. "Very good, David," Miguel was saying in a soft voice with a slight Spanish accent. "See how the blue and yellow make green when they touch. That is magic, yes?" David was looking directly at Miguel. This was shocking to Marcus. David almost never made eye contact with anyone, not even his own parents. But here he was, looking at this janitor's face and listening to every word. "More blue," David said suddenly. Marcus almost gasped. David had spoken. Not only had he spoken, but he had asked for something he wanted. This was huge progress. Miguel smiled and handed David a brush with blue paint. "More blue is perfect," he said. "You are a real artist, my friend." David dipped the brush in blue paint and added it to his paper. The color spread and mixed with the other paints, creating new shades and patterns. David laughed again, a sound Marcus had not heard in months. Marcus stood in the doorway, not sure what to do. Part of him wanted to rush in and ask what was happening. Part of him was angry that a janitor was alone with his son without permission. But mostly, Marcus was amazed. His son was happy. David was engaged and communicating in ways Marcus had never seen. Miguel must have sensed someone watching because he looked up and saw Marcus in the doorway. His face immediately changed from relaxed to worried. "Oh, Mr. Wellington," Miguel said, starting to stand up. "I am sorry, I did not mean to. I was just... Dad," David said, looking up from his painting. "Look, I made ocean." Marcus could not believe it. David had called him Dad and made eye contact and showed him something he was proud of. All in the same moment. Marcus felt tears starting to form in his eyes. "It's beautiful, David," Marcus managed to say. Miguel was cleaning up the paints quickly. "I am very sorry, sir," he said. "I know I should not be here with your son. I was cleaning the conference rooms and I found David wandering in the hallway. He seemed upset, so I thought maybe some art would help calm him down. I used to be a teacher, and I know sometimes children with autism respond well to creative activities." Marcus was processing this information slowly. David was wandering the hallway? Mrs. Peterson had to use the bathroom, Miguel explained. David must have left the child care center. I found him sitting outside this room rocking back and forth. He seemed very anxious. I did not want to leave him alone, but I also did not want to scare him by calling security. So I thought maybe I could help him feel better until Mrs. Peterson came back. Marcus looked at his son. David was still holding his paintbrush and looking at his artwork. He seemed completely calm and happy. "How long have you been painting with him?" Marcus asked. "Maybe 1 hour," Miguel said. "At first he just watched me paint. I was showing him how the colors work. Then he wanted to try. He is very good at it. Very natural." Marcus walked closer to the table. David's painting really was beautiful. It was not like the art other 8-year-olds made. It was more sophisticated with complex color patterns and flowing movements that looked almost professional. "David," Marcus said carefully, "do you like painting?" David nodded without looking away from his paper. "Colors are happy," he said. This was the longest sentence David had spoken in months. Marcus felt his chest tighten with emotion. Miguel was still packing up the paint supplies. "I should go now," he said. "I did not mean to cause any trouble." "Wait," Marcus said. "How did you know David has autism?" Miguel paused. "My nephew in El Salvador has autism," he said. "He is about the same age as David. When I see David sometimes in the building, he reminds me of my nephew. The way he moves, the way he arranges things. I understand a little bit about how his mind works." "And you said you used to be a teacher?" Miguel nodded. "In my country, I taught art to children for 15 years. But when I came to America, my teaching degree was not recognized here. I would need to go back to school for many years to become a teacher again. I have a family to support, so I work as a janitor instead. But I still love art and I still love working with children." Marcus was quiet for a moment, watching David add more colors to his painting. His son seemed completely absorbed in the activity. This was the most focused and happy Marcus had ever seen him. "David," Marcus said, "we should go back to the child care center now." David looked up with disappointment. "No more painting?" "We can paint again another time," Miguel said kindly. "But now you should go with your father." David carefully set down his paintbrush and looked at his finished artwork. "Can I keep it?" "Of course," Miguel said. "It is your painting." David picked up the paper very carefully, holding it with both hands so it would not drip. Marcus helped him carry it to the elevator. As they waited for the elevator, David said, "Miguel is nice." Marcus looked down at his son. "Yes, he seems very nice. He knows about colors," David continued. "He knows magic." When they got back to the child care center, Mrs. Peterson was waiting and looking worried. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I was only gone for 5 minutes, but when I came back, David was not here. I was about to call security." "It's okay," Marcus said. "Miguel found him and kept him safe." Mrs. Peterson looked relieved. "Oh, good. Miguel is wonderful with children. Sometimes he helps us with art projects during the day." Marcus was surprised. "He helps here during the day too." "Sometimes when he has time between his cleaning duties," Mrs. Peterson explained. "He volunteers to help with our art activities. The children love him. He has a special way with them." Marcus thought about this as he helped David gather his things. When Sarah came to pick up David the next morning, Marcus was still thinking about what had happened. "How was last night?" Sarah asked. "Different," Marcus said. David painted a picture. He talked more than usual. The next evening, Marcus finished his work early and went to pick up David from the child care center. He felt nervous, like he was going on a first date. He had been thinking about the painting session all day. During important business meetings, his mind wandered to the image of David laughing while mixing colors. Mrs. Peterson was surprised to see Marcus at 7 o'clock instead of his usual 9 or 10. "You're early tonight," she said with a smile. "I thought David and I could spend some time together," Marcus replied. It felt strange to say this. Usually Marcus picked up David only because he had to, not because he wanted to. David was sitting in his usual spot in the quiet room, arranging puzzle pieces by color, even though he was not trying to solve the puzzle. When he saw his father, David looked up briefly and then back at his puzzle pieces. "David," Marcus said gently, "would you like to paint tonight?" David's head snapped up, and for the first time in months, he looked directly at his father's face. "Paint with Miguel?" "Yes, with Miguel," Marcus confirmed. David stood up immediately and walked toward the door. This was the fastest Marcus had ever seen his son move when asked to do something. They took the elevator to the conference room floor. Marcus felt his heart beating faster as they walked down the hallway. What if Miguel was not there? What if last night had been a one-time thing? What if David got upset when they could not paint? But when they reached conference room B, Miguel was there waiting for them. He had spread plastic sheets on the table and set out several containers of paint. There were more colors tonight than there had been the night before. Reds and purples and oranges alongside the blues and greens and yellows. "Good evening, David," Miguel said warmly. "Are you ready to make more magic?" David walked straight to the table and sat down in the same chair he had used the night before. Miguel handed him a brush and a fresh piece of paper. "Tonight we try something new," Miguel said. "We paint feelings." Marcus sat in a chair nearby just as he had the night before, but this time instead of opening his laptop, he watched. He wanted to understand what was happening between Miguel and his son. "What does happy look like?" Miguel asked David. David thought for a moment, then dipped his brush in yellow paint. He made a big circle on his paper, then added orange swirls around it. The yellow and orange mixed together, creating a warm, glowing effect. "Beautiful," Miguel said. "Yellow is like sunshine. It makes people feel warm and good inside." "What does sad look like?" Miguel continued. David chose blue paint this time. He made long, drooping lines that fell down the paper like rain. Then, he added darker blue at the bottom, creating pools of color. Marcus watched in amazement. David was expressing emotions through art in ways he had never been able to express with words. The paintings were simple, but they clearly showed different feelings. "What about angry?" Miguel asked. David picked up red paint and made sharp, jagged lines across the paper. He pressed hard with the brush, making thick, aggressive strokes. Then he added black, creating a stormy, turbulent image. "Very good," Miguel said. "You understand that colors have feelings." Marcus found himself leaning forward in his chair. He had never realized that David understood emotions so clearly. The boy who seemed to show no feelings was actually very aware of different emotional states. After David had painted several feeling pictures, Miguel said, "Now, what feeling do you have right now?" David looked at all the paint colors available. He chose green and blue and made gentle, flowing curves on a new piece of paper. He added tiny dots of white and yellow, creating something that looked like a peaceful garden. "That is calm," Miguel said. "You feel calm when you paint." David nodded. "Calm is good," he said. These were the most words Marcus had heard his son speak in one conversation. He felt tears forming in his eyes again. "Miguel," Marcus said quietly, "can I ask you some questions?" Miguel looked at him with kind eyes. "Of course, Mr. Wellington. How do you know so much about children like David?" Miguel set down his own paintbrush and turned to face Marcus. "It is a long story," he said. "Are you sure you want to hear it?" Marcus nodded. David was absorbed in creating another painting, mixing colors and humming softly to himself. Miguel took a deep breath and began. "I was born in a small town in El Salvador. My family was very poor, but my mother always said that education was the way to make life better. I was good at school, especially art. My teachers said I had a gift for helping children learn." Miguel paused and looked at David, who was now painting what looked like a tree with rainbow-colored leaves. When I was 25, I got a job teaching art at an elementary school in San Salvador, Miguel continued. I loved that job. Every day I got to watch children discover that they could create beautiful things with their own hands. Art was like a universal language. Children who struggled with reading or math could express themselves through painting and drawing. Marcus listened carefully. He was learning more about Miguel in 5 minutes than he had learned about most of his employees in years. I taught for 15 years, Miguel said. I helped hundreds of children. Some of them were like David, special children who thought differently. I learned that these children often have amazing artistic abilities. Their brains see patterns and colors in ways that other people cannot. What made you come to America? Marcus asked. Miguel's face became sad. The violence in my country got very bad. Gangs were everywhere. They started threatening teachers because we taught children to think for themselves. My wife was pregnant with our first child, and I was afraid for our safety. We decided to leave everything behind and come here. Marcus felt a pang of guilt. He had everything handed to him from birth: money, education, opportunities. Miguel had to leave his home and career just to keep his family safe. When we arrived in New York 15 years ago, I thought I could continue teaching, Miguel continued. But the schools here said my degree was not good enough. They said I would need to go back to college for 4 years, then get a teaching certificate, then pass many tests. We had no money for that. We had a baby to feed. So you became a janitor, Marcus said. Miguel nodded. I took the first job I could find. It was night work, which was good because during the day I could take care of our children while my wife worked. The pay was not much, but it was steady. Do you regret coming here? Marcus asked. Miguel thought for a moment. No, he said finally. My children are safe here. My daughter is now in college studying to be a doctor. My son just graduated from high school and wants to be an engineer. They have opportunities I never had. That makes all the sacrifice worth it. Marcus looked at this man with new respect. Miguel had given up his career and his country for his family. He worked a job that was far below his abilities, but he never complained. He still found ways to use his gift for teaching, even if it was just helping children paint during his break time. But you still teach art, Marcus observed. Miguel smiled. On weekends, I volunteer at a community center in Queens. I teach art classes to immigrant children. Many of them are struggling in school because English is hard for them. But art speaks all languages. When they paint, they can show their true selves. And you have a nephew with autism? Yes, my sister's son. He is 9 years old now. When he was younger, my sister was very worried because he did not talk and did not play with other children. But I taught her to give him art supplies. Now he communicates through his drawings. He draws the most amazing pictures of animals and landscapes. Through his art, we learned that he notices everything around him. He just processes it differently. Marcus watched David, who was now on his 4th painting of the evening. Each picture was different, but all of them showed a sophisticated understanding of color and form. Why does art help children like David? Marcus asked. Think about it this way, Miguel explained. Most people learn to express themselves with words first, but children with autism often think in pictures and patterns. For them, art is more natural than speech. When David paints, he is showing you how his mind works. He is sharing his inner world. Marcus had never thought about it this way. He had always focused on trying to get David to communicate like other children. He had never considered that David might already be communicating, just in a different language. Look at what David is painting now, Miguel said softly. Marcus looked at his son's latest creation. David had painted 2 figures, one large and one small. The large figure was painted in dark colors and stood far away from the small figure. The small figure was surrounded by bright, chaotic swirls of color. What do you think this picture means? Miguel asked gently. Marcus studied the painting. The large, dark figure could be him, distant and intimidating. The small figure surrounded by chaos could be David, feeling overwhelmed and alone. I think Marcus said slowly. David is painting how he sees our relationship. Miguel nodded. Children with autism are often very perceptive. They notice things that adults miss. David knows you love him, but he also senses your frustration and confusion. Marcus felt like he had been punched in the stomach. His son could see that Marcus did not know how to be a good father. David could feel Marcus's disappointment and helplessness. How can I fix this? Marcus asked. You are already starting to fix it, Miguel said. You are here. You are watching. Tin. For the next month, Marcus did something he had never done in his entire career. He left work early every single day. At exactly 6 o'clock, he closed his laptop, ignored his ringing phone, and took the elevator down to the 10th floor to pick up David. At first, his employees were shocked. Jennifer, his assistant, kept asking if he was feeling sick. His business partners complained that he was not available for evening conference calls with overseas clients. His competitors probably thought he was losing his edge. Marcus did not care. For the first time in his adult life, something was more important than making money. Every evening, Marcus and David met Miguel in Conference Room B. Miguel had turned the room into a proper art studio. He brought in easels and better brushes and a wider variety of paints. The building's cleaning supplies budget had never included art materials, so Marcus quietly paid for everything himself. During these sessions, Marcus watched his son transform. David, who had always been quiet and withdrawn, became animated when he painted. He asked questions about color mixing. He experimented with different brush techniques. He even started giving names to his paintings. This one is called Happy Bird, David announced one evening, showing Marcus a painting of a bright yellow bird surrounded by rainbow swirls. And this one is Stormy Day, he said, pointing to a picture with dark blues and grays and dramatic, sweeping lines. But the biggest change was in how David interacted with people. He started making eye contact with Miguel regularly. He would hold conversations about art that lasted for several minutes. He even began looking at Marcus when he spoke. David is learning to trust, Miguel explained to Marcus one evening while David was absorbed in painting a sunset. Children with autism often feel overwhelmed by social interactions, but art gives them a safe way to connect with others. When David paints with us, he feels in control. This helps him feel safe enough to open up. Marcus was learning too. Under Miguel's patient guidance, he discovered that he was not completely hopeless at art. His paintings were still simple and childlike compared to David's natural talent, but they were improving. More importantly, painting helped Marcus understand how David's mind worked. You are thinking too much with your words, Miguel told Marcus one evening when he was struggling with a landscape painting. David thinks with pictures and feelings. Try to paint what you feel, not what you think you should paint. Marcus closed his eyes and thought about his relationship with David. Then he picked up his brush and painted without planning. The result was abstract, flowing lines in blues and greens with small bursts of yellow. It looked like a river with sunshine breaking through clouds. That is beautiful, Daddy, David said, looking at the painting. It looks like hope. Marcus was amazed. His 8-year-old son had seen something in his amateur painting that Marcus had not even realized he was expressing. After 4 weeks of evening painting sessions, Sarah noticed the changes in David. He's different, she told Marcus when she came to pick up David one Friday evening. He's talking more at home. He made eye contact with our neighbor yesterday. He even tried to show me a drawing he made at school. Art therapy is helping him, Marcus explained. He's learning to express himself in new ways. Art therapy? Sarah looked surprised. I thought you didn't believe in alternative treatments. Marcus felt embarrassed. Sarah was right. For 2 years, he had insisted on only traditional medical treatments for David. He had dismissed art therapy as unscientific. I was wrong about a lot of things, Marcus admitted. Sarah studied his face. You look different too, she said, more relaxed, less angry. Marcus realized she was right. For months after their divorce, he had felt angry all the time. Angry at Sarah for leaving. Angry at David for being different. angry at himself for not knowing how to fix anything, but the anger had faded during these weeks of painting. Maybe we should set up art activities at home too, Sarah suggested. David could paint on weekends when he's with me. Miguel could help with that, Marcus said. He's been teaching art to children for decades. Miguel? Marcus explained about the night janitor who had become their art teacher. He told Sarah about Miguel's background as a professional educator and his experience with autistic children. I'd like to meet him, Sarah said. The next week, Sarah came to the building during one of their evening painting sessions. Marcus was nervous about this meeting. Sarah had always been skeptical of his business world, and he worried she might think he was trying to buy David's affection with expensive art supplies. But when Sarah watched Miguel interact with David, her concerns disappeared. You have a gift, she told Miguel after observing him guide David through a complex color-mixing exercise. David responds to you in ways I've never seen. Miguel smiled humbly. David is a natural artist. He just needed someone to show him how to use his talents. Have you ever considered becoming a professional art therapist? Sarah asked. Miguel's face became wistful. I would love that, but it would require going back to school for many years. I have a family to support. Sarah looked at Marcus meaningfully. Marcus understood what she was thinking, but he was not ready to make that conversation yet. Over the following weeks, word spread through the building about the evening art sessions. Mrs. Peterson from the Child Care Center asked if Miguel could help with art projects during the day. Some of the other employees who worked late started stopping by to watch David paint. That kid is incredible, said Tom Rodriguez, one of Marcus's senior managers. I've never seen an 8-year-old with that kind of artistic ability. Marcus felt proud when people praised David's artwork, but more than that, he felt grateful to Miguel for helping him discover this side of his son. One evening, Dr. Patricia Webb, the child psychologist who had been working with David for over a year, came to observe their art session. Marcus had told her about David's progress, and she wanted to see it for herself. Dr. Webb watched quietly as David painted a picture of his family. In the painting, 3 figures stood close together, David in the middle with Marcus and Sarah on either side. All 3 figures were surrounded by bright, warm colors. This is remarkable, Dr. Webb told Marcus after the session. David is showing emotional connections and family bonds that he's never expressed before. Art therapy could be incredibly beneficial for him. Miguel isn't a licensed art therapist, Marcus said. He's just a janitor who used to be a teacher. Dr. Webb looked at Miguel with interest. What kind of training did you have in your home country? Miguel explained his educational background and his 15 years of experience teaching children with special needs. Your techniques are excellent, Dr. Webb said. You have natural instincts for working with autistic children. Have you ever considered getting certified as an art therapist here in the United States? I would need to go back to school, Miguel said. My family cannot afford for me to stop working. Dr. Webb nodded thoughtfully. I work with several programs that provide scholarships for people with your background. If you're interested, I could help you explore your options. That night after Sarah took David home and Dr. Webb left, Marcus and Miguel stayed in the conference room to clean up the art supplies. Miguel, Marcus said, I want to ask you something, but I don't want you to feel pressured to answer right away. Miguel looked at him curiously. What if I paid for you to go back to school? Marcus continued. What if I covered your living expenses while you got certified as an art therapist? You could keep working here part-time, and when you finish your degree, you could start your own practice or work with Dr. Webb's program. Miguel stared at Marcus in shock. Mr. Wellington, I cannot ask you to do something so expensive. You're not asking, Marcus said. I'm offering. You've given me something invaluable. You've helped me connect with my son. You've shown David that he has amazing talents. You've taught both of us that there are different ways to communicate and understand each other. Miguel sat down heavily in one of the conference room chairs. Why would you do this for me? Marcus thought about this question. A month ago, he would have said that successful people help each other because it's good business. But that was not why he wanted to help Miguel. Because you changed my life, Marcus said simply. You showed me how to be a better father. You helped me understand my son. You taught me that the most important things in life cannot be bought with money. Miguel had tears in his eyes. I need to talk to my wife about this. Of course, Marcus said. Take all the time you need to think about it. Over the weekend, Marcus could not stop thinking about his conversation with Miguel. He realized that offering to pay for Miguel's education was not just about helping the janitor. It was about creating a better future for David and for other children like him. On Monday evening, Miguel came to their art session with his wife, Maria. She was a small woman with kind eyes and calloused hands from her job as a hospital cleaner. Mr. Wellington, Maria said in careful English, Miguel told me about your offer. We are very grateful, but we must ask, why do you want to help us? Marcus looked at David, who was painting a picture of a school building surrounded by children of different colors. Because your husband is a teacher, Marcus said. He's one of the best teachers I've ever met. 3 months into their daily painting session, something extraordinary happened. Marcus arrived at conference room B to find David already there with Miguel, but instead of painting, they were having what looked like a real conversation. The red bird in my dream was flying over the blue house, David was saying, making hand gestures to illustrate his story. And the bird was singing a song that sounded like music boxes. Marcus stopped in the doorway, hardly believing what he was hearing. David was telling a story about a dream. He was using complete sentences, making eye contact, and even using his hands expressively. That sounds like a beautiful dream, Miguel responded. What did the bird's song make you feel? Happy and safe, David said without hesitation, like when I paint with you and Daddy. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. David had connected his feelings about the dream to his feelings about their art sessions. This was the kind of complex emotional thinking that doctors had said David might never develop. Good evening, David, Marcus said, entering the room. David turned around and smiled, actually smiled, at his father. Daddy, I was telling Miguel about my dream bird. Do you want to hear about it? For a moment, Marcus could not speak. His son had just asked him a question and invited him to share in something personal. This was the kind of normal father-son interaction Marcus had dreamed about for years. I would love to hear about your dream, Marcus managed to say. David told the story again, this time adding even more details. He described the colors of the bird's feathers and the shape of the blue house and the melody of the song. As he talked, his eyes sparkled with excitement. Would you like to paint your dream? Miguel suggested. David nodded eagerly and moved to his easel. But tonight, instead of starting with random colors, he seemed to have a clear vision of what he wanted to create. First, he painted a house in brilliant blue. Then he added a red bird with outstretched wings flying above it. The bird was more detailed than anything David had painted before. Marcus could see individual feathers and the curve of the bird's beak. As David painted, he continued to talk. In my dream, I could understand what the bird was saying. It was telling me that I was brave and smart and special. Marcus watched in amazement as his son worked. David's motor skills had improved dramatically over the past 3 months. His brushstrokes were confident and purposeful. His color choices were sophisticated and intentional. The bird said that my mind works differently than other people's minds, but that makes me see beautiful things that other people miss, David continued. Miguel looked at Marcus with raised eyebrows. This was profound insight from an 8-year-old boy. What else did the bird tell you? Marcus asked gently. It said that Daddy is learning to see beautiful things too, David said, adding golden rays of sunlight around the bird. And that makes the bird very happy. Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes. Through his dream story, David was telling him that he understood the changes that had been happening in their relationship. When David finished the painting, all 3 of them stood back to look at it. The artwork was stunning. It had the kind of emotional depth and technical skill that Marcus had seen in professional galleries. David, Miguel said quietly, this is the most beautiful painting you have ever made. David beamed with pride. It feels like the most important painting, he said. That evening, when Sarah came to pick up David, she immediately noticed the change in her son's demeanor. You're chattier than usual tonight, she said to David as he gathered his things. I painted my dream, David told her. And I told Daddy and Miguel about the bird that sang to me. Sarah looked at Marcus with surprise. He told you about a dream? Marcus nodded. He told us a whole story. He's been talking nonstop for the past hour. Sarah knelt down to David's level. Can you tell me about your dream too? David launched into the story again, this time adding new details about the colors of the sky and the texture of the bird's song. Sarah listened with growing amazement. This is incredible, she whispered to Marcus. He's never told me a story like this before. Dr. Webb had asked to observe David's progress again, so the following week she returned to watch another art session. This time David greeted her at the door. Hello, Dr. Webb, he said clearly. Do you want to see my dream painting? Dr. Webb nearly dropped her notebook. In all her sessions with David, he had never initiated a conversation with her. David proudly showed her the painting of the red bird and blue house. Then he told her the entire dream story, complete with explanations of what the different colors meant to him. David, Dr. Webb said when he finished, that was wonderful storytelling. How did it feel to share your dream with us? Good, David said. It feels good when people understand my thoughts. After the art session, Dr. Webb spoke privately with Marcus and Miguel. What I've witnessed tonight represents a breakthrough that typically takes years of intensive therapy to achieve, she said. David is demonstrating advanced communication skills, emotional awareness, and abstract thinking. His progress is remarkable. Miguel deserves all the credit, Marcus said. He knew how to reach David when the rest of us didn't. It's not just Miguel, Dr. Webb replied. David's progress is the result of feeling safe and accepted. He knows that in this room, with both of you, he doesn't have to pretend to be someone he's not. That emotional security has allowed his natural abilities to flourish. Dr. Webb turned to Miguel. Have you given more thought to pursuing formal art therapy training? David's progress is a perfect example of why we need more practitioners like you. Miguel nodded. Mr. Wellington has made it possible for me to go back to school. I start classes next month. That's wonderful news, Dr. Webb said. I'd like to document David's progress as part of a research study if you're willing. His case could help other families understand the potential of art therapy for children with autism. Marcus looked at David, who was cleaning his brushes with careful precision. What do you think, David? Would you like to help other children by sharing your story? David considered this seriously. Will it help other kids paint their feelings? Yes, Dr. Webb said. It might help other children learn to express themselves the way you've learned to do. Then yes, David said firmly. I want to help. Over the following weeks, David's communication continued to improve. He started asking Marcus questions about his work, showing interest in the world beyond their art sessions. Daddy, why do you have so many meetings? David asked one evening while painting a picture of a tall building. I have to make decisions about my companies, Marcus explained. People need me to help them solve problems. Like how Miguel helps me solve the problem of showing my feelings, David asked. Marcus paused, struck by his son's insight. Yes, exactly. Like that. Then your job is important too, David concluded. But painting together is still more fun than meetings. Marcus laughed. You're absolutely right about that. Sarah began joining their evening art sessions once a week. At first, she was hesitant about intruding on what had become Marcus and David's special time. But David enthusiastically invited her to paint with them. Mommy, you can paint your feelings too, David told her. Miguel teaches everyone. During these family painting sessions, something beautiful happened. For the first time since their divorce, Marcus and Sarah were able to be in the same room without tension or conflict. They were united in their amazement at David's progress and their gratitude toward Miguel. Look, Mommy, David said one evening, showing Sarah a painting he had made of 3 people holding hands. This is our family. We're different now, but we still love each other. Sarah had to excuse herself to the bathroom to cry. When she returned, her eyes were red, but she was smiling. "You're right, David," she said. "We are different now. But love doesn't disappear just because people live in different places." Marcus felt a deep sense of peace. Their family might be unconventional, but they had found a way to stay connected through their shared love for David and their commitment to helping him thrive. One evening in December, David surprised everyone by announcing that he wanted to give his paintings as Christmas gifts. "I want to give my bird dream painting to Dr. Webb," he said, "and I want to make special paintings for Mommy and Miguel and Mrs. Peterson." "What about for me?" Marcus asked, feeling a little left out. David smiled mysteriously. "I'm making you something very special, but it's a surprise." For the next 2 weeks, David worked on his Christmas paintings with intense focus. He spent extra time mixing colors and planning compositions. Miguel helped him with technical aspects, but the ideas were entirely David's own. On the last day before Christmas vacation, David presented his gifts. He gave Dr. Webb the bird dream painting, explaining that he wanted her to remember that children with autism have beautiful thoughts to share. He gave Sarah a painting of a house with warm yellow light glowing from every window. "This is love," he told her. "It shows that home is wherever you feel safe and understood." He gave Mrs. Peterson a painting of children playing together, with rainbow bridges connecting them. "Thank you for taking care of me," he said. He gave Miguel a painting of a teacher surrounded by students of different colors and sizes. "This is you in your new job," David explained, "helping all kinds of children discover their gifts." As winter turned to spring, Marcus found himself doing something he had never done before. He started eating lunch with Miguel in the building's cafeteria. What began as brief conversations about David's progress had grown into genuine friendship. "Tell me about your family," Marcus said one day as they sat together eating sandwiches. Miguel's face lit up. "My daughter Rosa is studying pre-med at Queens College. She wants to be a pediatric doctor. My son Carlos just got accepted to study engineering at City University. They both work part-time jobs to help pay for school." "They sound like amazing kids," Marcus said. "You must be very proud." "Every day," Miguel replied. "But it has not been easy. When we first came to America, Rosa was only 5 and Carlos was 3. They had to learn English while I was working night shifts and Maria was working days. We barely saw each other as a family for the first few years." Marcus tried to imagine the struggles Miguel's family had faced, while Marcus had been complaining about which private school to send David to. Miguel's children had been learning a new language and helping their parents navigate a foreign country. "How did you keep your family together through all that?" Marcus asked. Miguel thought for a moment. "We had Sunday dinners," he said. "No matter how tired we were or how many jobs we were working, every Sunday we cooked together and ate together, and talked about our week. Rosa would tell us what she learned in school. Carlos would show us his drawings. Maria and I would share stories about our work. It was our time to remember that we were a family." Marcus felt a pang of envy. His family had never had traditions like that. Even when he and Sarah were married, their schedules were too busy for regular family meals. David usually ate with his nanny while Marcus worked late and Sarah attended social events. "Do you still have Sunday dinners?" Marcus asked. "Every week," Miguel smiled. "Now that the children are older, they bring friends sometimes. Our little apartment gets very crowded, but it is full of love and laughter." Marcus found himself thinking about Miguel's Sunday dinners for the rest of the day. That evening, while painting with David, he brought up the topic. "David, would you like to have dinner together every Sunday?" "Just you and me and Mommy?" David looked up from his painting of a flower garden. "Like a family dinner?" "Yes, like a family dinner." "Can we paint after dinner?" David asked. "Of course," Marcus said. "We can paint and tell stories about our week." When Marcus suggested the idea to Sarah, she was surprised but pleased. "David would love that," she said. "But are you sure you can commit to every Sunday? Your work schedule is pretty unpredictable." "I'm making changes," Marcus said. "David and you are more important than any business meeting." Their first Sunday dinner was awkward. They met at a restaurant near Sarah's apartment, and the conversation felt forced and polite. But David was excited about the new tradition. "This is like Miguel's family dinners," he told Sarah. "He says families need special time together." By their third Sunday dinner, they had found their rhythm. David would tell them about his week at school and his art projects. Sarah would share stories from the hospital where she worked. Marcus would talk about his business, but in simple terms that David could understand. "I'm helping a company in California make better computers," Marcus explained one Sunday. "They want to build computers that can help doctors take care of sick people." "Like helping mommy's patients?" David asked. "Exactly like that," Marcus said. The weeks passed. Marcus began to see Miguel not just as David's art teacher, but as a mentor in life. Miguel had wisdom that Marcus's expensive education had never taught him. "How do you stay so positive?" Marcus asked Miguel one day. "You gave up your career, you work a job that's below your abilities, you struggle financially, but you never seem bitter or angry." Miguel was quiet for a long moment. "When I was young, I thought success meant having an important job and making lots of money," he said. "But when we had to leave our country, I learned that everything can change in an instant. The only things that truly matter are the people you love and the good you do in the world." "Don't you ever feel frustrated about starting over?" Marcus pressed. "Sometimes," Miguel admitted. "But then I remember that every night when I come home, my children run to hug me. They are proud of their father, not because of my job title, but because they know I work hard for our family. When I help David paint, I see the joy in his eyes, and I remember why I became a teacher in the first place." Marcus realized that Miguel had something he had spent his whole life trying to buy: contentment. Miguel found meaning in small moments and simple pleasures. He measured success by the impact he had on people, not by the money in his bank account. One evening, Marcus made an unexpected decision. Instead of driving straight home after their art session, he asked Miguel if he could meet his family. "You want to come to my apartment?" Miguel asked, surprised. "If that's okay," Marcus said. "I'd like to meet Rosa and Carlos, and I want to thank Maria in person for sharing her husband with David and me." Miguel looked uncertain. "Mr. Wellington, our apartment is very small. It is not like the places you are used to." "Miguel," Marcus said gently, "I don't care about the size of your apartment. I care about the people in it." David was excited about visiting Miguel's family. "Can I bring them one of my paintings?" he asked. "That would be very nice," Marcus said. Miguel's apartment was in Queens, in a building that had seen better days. The hallways were narrow and the paint was peeling, but everything was clean and well-maintained. When Miguel opened the door to his apartment, Marcus was struck by how warm and welcoming it felt despite its small size. The living room, kitchen, and dining area were all one room. A small television sat on a table surrounded by mismatched chairs. The walls were covered with children's artwork, some of it clearly Rosa's and Carlos's work from when they were younger, and some of it more recent pieces that looked like they might be from Miguel's community center classes. "Welcome to our home," Maria said in careful English, taking Marcus's coat. Rosa and Carlos greeted Marcus politely, but seemed a little nervous about having their father's wealthy boss in their tiny apartment. "David!" Carlos exclaimed when he saw the boy. "Papa tells us you are an amazing artist." David shyly handed Carlos one of his paintings, a picture of a family gathered around a dinner table. "This is for your family," he said. "Miguel told me about your Sunday dinners." Rosa knelt down to David's level. "This is beautiful. Can you tell me about the people in the painting?" As David explained his artwork, Marcus watched Miguel's children interact with his son. Rosa spoke to David with the same patience and kindness that Miguel showed. Carlos asked thoughtful questions about David's artistic choices. It was clear that Miguel had raised his children to value compassion and understanding. Maria insisted on serving dinner, even though Marcus protested that he didn't want to impose. The meal was simple: rice and beans and chicken, but it was delicious. More importantly, the conversation around the small table was warm and genuine. "Papa says, you are helping him go back to school," Rosa said to Marcus. "That means so much to our family. Teaching is Papa's passion." "Your father is helping my family too," Marcus replied. He's teaching David and me how to communicate with each other. Papa has always had a gift with children, Carlos added. Even when we were little and he was working so many hours, he always found time to help us with school projects or teach us new things. Marcus listened to stories about Miguel's dedication as a father. Despite working multiple jobs and struggling financially, Miguel had never missed a school play or parent conference. He had helped his children with homework every night, even when he was exhausted from physical labor. I want to be a teacher like Papa someday, Carlos said. Maybe not art, but engineering teachers are important too. Papa taught me that helping people learn is one of the best ways to make the world better. After dinner, Miguel showed Marcus the small corner of the apartment that served as his art studio. Canvases were stacked against the walls, and a card table held brushes and paints. Despite the cramped conditions, Miguel had continued creating his own artwork. These are beautiful, Marcus said, looking at Miguel's paintings. They were landscapes and portraits, all done with the same skill and sensitivity that Miguel brought to teaching David. I paint to relax, Miguel explained, and to remember the places we left behind. One painting caught Marcus's attention. It showed a man in work clothes kneeling beside a small boy who was painting at an easel. The man's face was filled with gentle patience, and the boy's face glowed with concentration and joy. Is this you and David? Marcus asked. Miguel nodded. I painted it last month. It reminds me why this work is so important. Marcus stared at the painting for a long time. In it, he could see everything he was learning about what mattered in life. The man in the painting wasn't wearing an expensive suit or sitting in a corporate office. He was on his knees, meeting a child at the child's level, sharing his knowledge and his patience. Miguel, Marcus said quietly, can I buy this painting? Miguel looked surprised. You want to buy it? I want to hang it in my office, Marcus said. I want to look at it every day and remember what real success looks like. That night, driving home with David sleeping in the back seat, Marcus thought about the evening. 6 months after Miguel started his art therapy certification program, Marcus made a decision that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. He converted the largest room in his penthouse apartment into a professional art studio for David. Transformation of the space took 3 weeks. Marcus hired contractors to install proper lighting, ventilation, and storage for art supplies. He bought professional-grade easels, a wide variety of paints and brushes, and even a small kiln for pottery projects. The room had floor-to-ceiling windows that filled the space with natural light during the day. When David saw the finished studio for the first time, he stood in the doorway with his mouth open. This is all for me? He asked in wonder. This is your space, Marcus said. You can paint here whenever you want. You can invite friends over to create art with you. You can experiment with new techniques. David walked slowly around the room, touching the easels and examining the art supplies. It's like a real artist's studio, he said softly. That's because you are a real artist, Marcus replied. The studio became the heart of their home. David painted there every day after school, and Marcus often joined him. Sometimes Sarah would come over for their Sunday dinners and stay to paint with them. Even Miguel visited on weekends to work on advanced techniques with David. But the studio was just one part of the transformation that was happening in Marcus's life. Inspired by David's progress and Miguel's dedication, Marcus had started making changes to his business as well. I want to start a foundation, Marcus announced to his board of directors during their monthly meeting. A foundation that provides art therapy programs for children with autism and other developmental differences. The room fell silent. Marcus's business partners looked at each other with confusion and concern. Marcus, said Robert Chen, his longtime business partner, that's a very noble idea, but foundations don't make money. They spend money. Lots of money. I know, Marcus said calmly. That's the point. Marcus explained his plan. The Wellington Foundation would partner with schools, hospitals, and community centers to bring art therapy programs to children who needed them. They would provide training for teachers and therapists, fund art supplies and equipment, and create scholarships for people like Miguel who wanted to become certified art therapists. How much money are we talking about? Asked Patricia Williams, the company's chief financial officer. I'm starting with $10 million from my personal funds, Marcus said. If the programs are successful, I'll invest more. The board members exchanged worried glances. $10 million was a significant amount even for someone as wealthy as Marcus. Why this cause? Robert asked. Why art therapy? Marcus thought about David's transformation over the past year. He thought about Miguel's dedication and wisdom. He thought about all the children who might be struggling to communicate and express themselves, just as David had struggled. Because I've learned that some of the most brilliant minds think differently than we expect them to, Marcus said. Art therapy doesn't try to change these children. It helps them discover and develop their natural gifts. It gives them a voice. After much discussion, the board agreed to support the foundation. Marcus's track record as a businessman had earned him enough credibility to take this risk. The first step was helping Miguel complete his certification program. Marcus had kept his promise to cover Miguel's education and living expenses, but he wanted to do more than that. He hired Miguel as the foundation's first director of art therapy programs, even before Miguel had finished his coursework. I don't understand, Miguel said when Marcus offered him the position. I'm still a student. I don't have my certification yet. You have 15 years of teaching experience and a natural gift for helping children, Marcus replied. Your certification will make it official, but you're already qualified in the ways that matter most. Miguel's new role allowed him to quit his night janitor job and focus entirely on his studies and developing programs for the foundation. For the first time in 15 years, he could be home for dinner with his family every night. The foundation's AI first program launched at David's school. Marcus had convinced the principal to let Miguel run an after-school art therapy program for children with special needs. 12 children signed up for the pilot program, including David. Marcus observed the first session from the back of the classroom. Miguel had transformed the space with colorful decorations and inspirational artwork. Each child had their own easel and set of art supplies. Today, we're going to paint our superpowers, Miguel announced to the group. A girl named Emma raised her hand. I don't have superpowers. I have ADHD. Miguel smiled. Emma, ADHD means your brain is very active and creative. That sounds like a superpower to me. What would super creativity look like in a painting? Emma thought for a moment, then picked up a brush and began making energetic, swirling patterns on her canvas. The movements were quick and spontaneous, full of energy and life. That's beautiful, Emma, Miguel said. Your superpower is making art that feels alive and exciting. Marcus watched as each child discovered their own artistic superpower. A boy with autism named Jake painted precise, geometric patterns that were mathematically perfect. A girl with dyslexia named Sophie created abstract compositions that told stories without using any words. And David painted a picture of children with different abilities working together to create a massive mural. In his painting, each child contributed their unique strengths to make something beautiful that none of them could have created alone. After the session, Marcus approached Miguel. How do you make it look so easy? It's not easy, Miguel admitted. Each child needs something different. But when you focus on their strengths instead of their challenges, amazing things happen. Word about the program spread quickly. Parents started calling the school asking if their children could participate. Teachers from other schools wanted to know how to start similar programs. Dr. Webb, who had been documenting David's progress, published a research paper about the benefits of art therapy for children with autism. She featured David's story prominently, with Marcus and Sarah's permission. David's case demonstrates that children with autism have tremendous potential for growth and communication, Dr. Webb wrote. When we provide the right environment and support, these children can exceed all expectations. The research paper caught the attention of autism advocacy groups and educational organizations. Marcus started receiving invitations to speak at conferences about the foundation's work. At first, Marcus was reluctant to speak publicly about David's condition. He worried about his son's privacy and his own ability to articulate what they had learned. I'm a businessman, he told Sarah. I don't know how to talk to educators and therapists. You know how to talk about David, Sarah replied. You know how to talk about Miguel. You know how to talk about what you've learned. That's all you need. Marcus's first speaking engagement was at a conference for parents of children with autism. He was nervous as he walked onto the stage, but when he began talking about David's transformation, the words came naturally. A year ago, my son rarely spoke and never made eye contact, Marcus told the audience. I thought his autism was something that needed to be fixed. I hired the most expensive specialists and tried every traditional therapy available. He clicked to a slide showing one of David's early paintings, a simple but beautiful landscape. Then a night janitor taught my son to paint. And through art, David found his voice. He didn't become normal, he became himself. He became confident and expressive and joyful. Marcus showed more of David's artwork, each piece more sophisticated than the last. I learned that my son didn't need to be fixed, Marcus continued. He needed to be understood. He needed someone who could see his gifts instead of focusing on his deficits. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. Many parents were crying as they recognized their own struggles in Marcus's story. Miguel Santos, our foundation's director, used to be a professional teacher, but when he came to America, he had to work as a janitor to support his family. The system failed to recognize his talents, just as it often fails to recognize our children's talents. Marcus paused and looked out at the audience. The beautiful irony is that Miguel, the undervalued janitor, was exactly the person my son needed. He had patience, wisdom, and the ability to see potential where others saw problems. He taught me that the most important qualifications for helping our children aren't degrees or certifications. They're love, understanding, and the belief that every child has something valuable to offer the world. When Marcus finished his presentation, the audience gave him a standing ovation. Afterwards, dozens of parents approached him with questions about starting art therapy programs in their own communities. Over the following months, Marcus spoke at more conferences and meetings. The foundation expanded to work with schools and hospitals in 5 states. They trained over 100 teachers and therapists in Miguel's techniques. But the most rewarding transformation was happening at home. Marcus had learned to communicate with David through art, but more than that, he had learned to appreciate David exactly as he was. Their Sunday family dinners had evolved into Sunday art sessions. Marcus, Sarah. 2 years after that first evening when Marcus found David laughing while painting with Miguel, the Wellington Foundation was hosting its first annual art exhibition. The gallery space in downtown Manhattan was filled with artwork created by children in their programs from across the country. Marcus stood at the entrance greeting guests, but his eyes kept searching for David. His son was somewhere in the gallery, giving tours to visitors and explaining the stories behind different paintings. At 10 years old, David had become a confident advocate for art therapy and autism awareness. Mr. Wellington? A woman approached him with a young boy who looked to be about David's age. I'm Jennifer Martinez, and this is my son Alex. He's in the program you started in Los Angeles. The boy stepped forward and shook Marcus's hand with surprising confidence. Thank you for helping my school get an art teacher, Alex said clearly. Before the program, I didn't have friends. Now I have lots of friends who like to paint with me. Marcus knelt down to Alex's level. I'm glad the program is helping you. Do you have any artwork in tonight's exhibition? Alex nodded enthusiastically. I painted a picture of my family as superheroes. My mom is super strength because she works 2 jobs. My dad is super speed because he delivers packages all day. And I'm super colors because I can paint feelings. I can't wait to see it, Marcus said. Maybe you can show me where it's hanging. As Alex led him through the gallery, Marcus marveled at the transformation in the boy. According to his mother, Alex had been extremely withdrawn before joining the art program. Now he was confidently interacting with strangers and talking proudly about his artwork. They stopped in front of a vibrant painting that showed 3 figures in colorful superhero costumes. The composition was sophisticated for a child's work, with careful attention to color balance and emotional expression. This is incredible, Alex, Marcus said. You're a very talented artist. Miguel taught me that everyone is talented at something, Alex replied. You just have to find the right way to show it. Across the gallery, Marcus spotted David standing in front of a large display that featured his own artistic journey. Photos showed his progression from those first simple color experiments with Miguel to his current complex, emotionally rich paintings. David was talking to a group of adults, gesturing expressively as he explained his artistic process. Marcus moved closer to listen. "This painting is called Before and After," David was saying, pointing to a canvas that showed two scenes side by side. The left side shows a boy sitting alone with gray and black colors all around him. That was me before I learned to paint. The right side shows the same boy surrounded by friends and family, with rainbow colors everywhere. That's me now. An elderly woman in the group raised her hand. "David, what would you tell other children who have autism and feel scared or alone?" David thought carefully before answering. "I would tell them that their brains are not broken. They're just different. And different can be really beautiful if you find the right people to help you show your gifts." Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes. His son had become an eloquent spokesperson for children with autism, but more than that, he had become a confident, happy young person who understood his own worth. "David also wants to tell you about our art teacher," said Mrs. Peterson, who had accompanied David to the exhibition. "Mr. Santos, would you join us?" Miguel appeared from behind a display wall, wearing a suit instead of his usual janitor's uniform. Over the past 2 years, he had completed his art therapy certification and earned a master's degree in special education. He now supervised art therapy programs in 12 schools and trained new teachers for the foundation. "Thank you, Mrs. Peterson," Miguel said with a warm smile. "But tonight is about celebrating our students' achievements, not my work." A man in the group stepped forward. "Actually, I'd like to hear about your work, Mr. Santos. I'm Dr. Richard Coleman from the National Institute of Mental Health. We're considering funding a nationwide expansion of art therapy programs like yours." Miguel looked surprised but pleased. "I would be honored to discuss our methods with you, Dr. Coleman." As the group continued their conversation, Marcus found himself standing next to Sarah, who had been watching David with obvious pride. "He's remarkable," she said quietly. "Sometimes I can hardly believe this is the same little boy who used to rock in corners and refuse to make eye contact." "Miguel saw his potential from the very beginning," Marcus replied. "When I found them painting together that first night, Miguel told me that David was a natural artist. I didn't understand what he meant then. Do you understand now?" Marcus nodded. David was always trying to communicate. He was always creative and intelligent and emotionally aware. He just needed someone who could recognize his language and teach him how to use it. Sarah took Marcus's arm gently. "You've changed too, you know. You're not the same man you were 2 years ago." Marcus considered this. She was right. 2 years ago, he had measured success in stock prices and profit margins. He had spent more time with his phone than with his son. He had seen David's autism as a problem to be solved rather than a difference to be understood. "Miguel changed all of us," Marcus said. "He showed me what it means to truly see people for who they are instead of who I think they should be." Across the gallery, Marcus noticed Miguel talking with his own family. Rosa was now in her final year of medical school, and Carlos had just started his engineering program. Maria stood proudly beside her husband, wearing a new dress that Miguel had bought her with his first paycheck as the foundation's director. The sight of Miguel's family reminded Marcus of how much had changed. For all of them, Miguel was no longer cleaning offices at night. Instead, he was helping children discover their voices during the day. His talents were finally being recognized and valued. "Ladies and gentlemen," came an announcement over the gallery's sound system. "We're ready to begin our special presentation." The crowd gathered in the center of the gallery, where a large screen had been set up. Marcus took his place at the podium with David standing beside him. 2 years ago, Marcus began, "I thought I knew what success looked like. I thought it meant having the most money, the biggest office, and the most powerful business connections." He clicked to the first slide, which showed a photo of his corporate headquarters. "I was wrong. Success isn't about what you accumulate for yourself. Success is about what you give to others and how you help them discover their own potential. Go. Next slide showed a photo of David's first painting with Miguel, the simple but joyful swirls of color they had created together. This foundation exists because a night janitor saw something in my son that I had missed. Miguel Santos recognized David's artistic gifts and helped him develop them. But more than that, Miguel taught both David and me that differences aren't deficits, they're opportunities. Marcus clicked through slides showing children from their programs, kids painting, laughing, expressing themselves, and building confidence. Today, our foundation serves over 3,000 children in 15 states. We've trained 200 teachers and therapists. We've provided art therapy programs to schools that never had them before. But the most important thing we've done is help children and families understand that autism and other differences are not obstacles to overcome. They're strengths to celebrate. The audience applauded as Marcus clicked to the final slide, a group photo of all the children in their programs taken earlier that day. These children are not broken. They don't need to be fixed. They need to be understood, accepted, and given opportunities to show their incredible talents. That's what Miguel taught me, and that's what the Wellington Foundation will continue to do for as long as these children need our support. As the applause died down, David stepped forward to the microphone. I want to say something too, he said clearly. 2 years ago, I was scared all the time. I didn't know how to tell people what I was thinking or feeling. I felt alone even when I was with my family. David paused and looked at Marcus, then at Miguel. But Miguel taught me that I wasn't broken. He taught me that my brain just works differently, and that's okay. He showed me how to use art to share my thoughts with other people. And Daddy learned how to understand my art language. David's voice grew stronger as he continued. Now I have friends. I can tell stories. I can help other kids who feel scared, like I used to feel. Miguel didn't just teach me how to paint. He taught me how to be proud of who I am. The gallery erupted in applause. Marcus saw parents wiping away tears, teachers nodding in recognition, and children clapping enthusiastically. After the presentation, the crowd mingled and continued viewing the artwork. Marcus found himself in conversation with Dr. Coleman from the National Institute of Mental Health. Mr. Wellington, what you've accomplished here is extraordinary, Dr. Coleman said. We'd like to partner with your foundation to create a national model for art therapy programs. Would you be interested in that kind of expansion? Only if Miguel leads the effort, Marcus replied immediately. This is his vision and his expertise. I just provide the funding. I'd very much like to meet with Mr. Santos to discuss the possibilities, Dr. Coleman said. As the evening wound down, Marcus, David, Sarah, and Miguel gathered in front of David's latest masterpiece,